Anna Wintour has just banned Meghan Markle and Prince Harry from the Met Gala.
In 2026, the Met Gala list went out, and her name was not on it. The Netflix deal that built the whole California life was quietly cut down to something smaller. Then a live royal panel put the question to Lady Colin Campbell, who has covered this family for 40 years, and she answered in one word: not a kind one. Not one about love.
Harry will have already created sufficient distance between Meghan and himself.
The woman who wrote Prince Harry's biography was sitting right there, the one person in Britain with every reason to argue, and she said nothing to defend the marriage. So what word did Lady C use, and why does she think this is the year it stops? The forecast. Nobody at the table disputed. Lady Colin Campbell's reading of this marriage rests on a single word, and it is not a romantic one. Prince Harry, in her account, has served his purpose. That is how she put it on a panel discussion earlier this year. The two of them, she said, are no longer aligned in what they want, and if the purpose is spent then for Meghan, it is time to move on. Not the affection, the purpose. Another panelist put a shape to what moving on would look like. Someone older, someone considerably richer, someone who could fund the life she is understood to want. Nobody at that table argued the point. Nobody softened it either. None of these people have seen a document. There is no petition, no court filing, no source inside the household. And Lady C herself has been confidently wrong before about timings and outcomes involving this family. What she is offering is a reading, built from 40 years of watching how this world behaves once the cameras stop. But the reading did not stay confined to one commentator with a reputation for saying the unsayable. Within the same run of programs, a royal correspondent claimed there had been meetings in Los Angeles with extremely wealthy men. Not parties, not premieres, meetings. He allowed the obvious innocent explanation immediately, and it is the first one to hold on to. A woman running a consumer brand needs investors, and investors take meetings. The commentators pressing the point were not describing investors. They were describing a search, and sitting in that same conversation, with more reason than anyone in British broadcasting to push back on it, was the woman who wrote Prince Harry's biography. She said nothing in his defense. Subscribe now, because what Angela Levin said instead is harder than anything Lady C said, and it is the reason this forecast stopped being one woman's opinion. The biographer's silence. Angela Levin spent roughly 2 years around Prince Harry researching the book she published about him. 2 years of access, of travel, of watching him work rooms and shake hands and be, in her telling, rather better at his job than his critics allowed. Her writing about him has been consistently warm. She has described him more than once as a man drawn into something he did not fully understand. If anybody on British television had a motive to sit up and defend this marriage as a love story, it was her. She had the standing to do it. She had the material. She had spent longer in the man's company than any commentator in the country. The question came round the table to her, and she did not take the opening. There was no interruption from her while the forecast was being made. No visible discomfort. None of the small, defensive noises a sympathetic biographer makes when a subject is being described as an expired asset. She waited until it was her turn. What she said instead did more damage than the line she was answering. In Levin's view, the Duchess has been pursuing extremely wealthy men for a considerable time. She was careful about the part she could not possibly know, and that care is worth noting because it is the difference between a documented pattern and an impression. She said she had no idea whether those men were uninterested in Meghan or whether Meghan had simply not been interested in them. Her conclusion about the marriage carried no such hedging. In Levin's reading, Meghan is still holding on to Harry because she has not yet found the right person. Read the verb rather than the sentiment. Not still devoted to him, not still building something with him. Holding on. In that framing, the marriage is not a destination that has disappointed. It is a position being held while something better is looked for. There is a straightforward answer to all of this, and Levin offers none. A woman who wanted out of a marriage on financial grounds has had 6 years and enormous global leverage in which to leave, and has not left. 2 young children complicate every calculation. Any settlement would be brutal, public, and permanent. The simplest explanation for a marriage that continues is usually that the people inside it want it to continue, and no commentator on any panel can see inside it. But it is what Lady C says next that separates her from everyone else on that circuit, because when the host handed her the easiest line in the entire story, she refused to take it. What Lady C refuses to say. The version the internet prefers is simple. Poor Meghan, duped. She thought she was marrying a multi-billionaire and got a spare prince on an allowance, living in a cottage on someone else's estate. The host offered her exactly that. With due respect, Lady C said, and then took it apart on air. In her account, the Duchess had known for years that Harry did not have the money she wanted him to have. That was not a discovery made at Frogmore. It was a fact she had understood well in advance. And Harry, in the same account, had sold her something equally untrue. A man far more powerful than he has ever actually been. Each of them, she said, was deceiving the other. That is a materially different story from the one that circulates in clip form, and it is worth pausing on how rarely it gets repeated. The clips travel because they flatter one side. This does not. She went further and described a plan the pair of them allegedly shared. William and Catherine would hold Britain and the Commonwealth. These two would take the rest of the world. The global royal couple, running a parallel operation out of California, with a 1,000-year-old institution informally carved in half between 2 households. Her verdict on why it collapsed is withering, and lands on both of them with equal weight. Neither of them, in her view, can run a business. Then came the question that usually produces a headline, and she declined to produce one. Asked who is to blame for what these two did to that family, she did not hand the audience the answer it wanted. Mostly Meghan, she said, but with Harry's connivance. Connivance, not weakness. She has argued more than once that a woman like that requires an enabler, and that Harry did not stumble into this. He volunteered. He was a grown man with a title, an inheritance, and his pick of the country, and he knew what he was signing. This is the part that gets lost when the clips circulate, and it is the part that makes her forecast coherent rather than merely cruel. She is not predicting that a scheming woman will discard an innocent man. She is predicting that a transaction both parties entered knowingly has stopped paying one of them, which raises the only question that actually matters to the forecast. What, in 2026, is the arrangement still paying? What she is actually married to in 2026. There is a moment on tape that hangs over every one of these predictions, and it requires no interpretation from any commentator. Prince Harry, 41 years old, sitting in a podcast studio. The question is about as gentle as questions get, the sort of thing asked to warm a guest up rather than corner him. What does he do for a living? He could not produce an answer. There was a pause of the kind that podcast editors usually cut out, and this one did not. He reached for the dukedom. He reached for being a prince. Then he stopped and moved the conversation somewhere else, and the silence sat there afterwards, doing more work than anything either man said for the rest of the hour. The commentary around it has been unkind, and one image in particular has stuck. The well-trained racehorse that performs beautifully on the track and has no idea what to do off it. Montecito, in that reading, is a very expensive field with no track in it. The commercial picture is harder to explain away than the awkward silence. He accepted a reported £50,000 to speak at a property conference. When the pair first arrived in California, appearance fees in the region of $1 million were the numbers being discussed. That is a steep line downwards in 6 years. The Netflix relationship, once the anchor of the whole American project, was restructured in 2026 into something smaller and non-exclusive, rather than the sweeping first-look deal that made headlines in 2020. There is a fair reading of all that which almost nobody on these panels offers. The streaming market itself contracted in the same window. Every celebrity production deal signed in the pandemic boom was cut back, and blaming one couple for an industry-wide correction is lazy. The Invictus Games, which he built and which continues to function, is a real institution with real veterans in it. But the panels are not measuring what he has achieved. They are measuring what a magazine editor of 40 years standing measured when she summed the whole marriage up in one word. "Meghan has to hold on to Harry," she said, "because he is her entree." That was said years ago when the entree still opened doors, and the case being made now is that this was always the arrangement, long before Windsor, and that there is a trail of people behind her who found out what happens when they stopped being useful. The latter, the claim that this marriage was a rung rather than a destination, rests on what came before it, and the resume itself proves nothing. Critics lay it out as a sequence. Marcus Anderson, the Soho House figure who decided who came through which door, from around 2012, and through that world a friendship with Jessica Mulroney, whose family sat close to Canadian political power. By 2014, a cable actress was on a platform in Dublin as a counselor at One Young World, sharing a stage with figures of genuine international standing. That is also a completely ordinary description of how a working actor with a rising profile builds a network, and thousands of people in that industry do precisely the same thing without anyone calling it a scheme. Paul Burrell took the sequence and extended it forward. He worked for Diana, Princess of Wales, for 10 years, and his credibility is contested, and it should be. He has published, he has appeared on reality television, and he has profited from proximity to this family in ways his critics never let him forget. His arithmetic was almost comically direct. The current arrangement will never be enough. She has millions. The natural next rung is a billionaire. Why would she not step up? He then extended it into California politics, which is speculation stacked on speculation, with no declaration, no committee, and no campaign filing anywhere behind it. The sharper accusation is not the climbing at all. It is what allegedly happened to the people once the climb was done. A childhood friend from the age of 2, a bridesmaid at the first wedding, has described a shutdown mechanism. A decision is made that a person is out, and the warmth simply stops. Cold, complete, and without a conversation. No row and no explanation offered afterwards to anyone who asked. She drew a line straight through the middle of a life. "There is Meghan before fame," she said, "and there is Meghan after it." Jessica Mulroney, whose children had a prominent role at Windsor, was gone within 2 years of the wedding. Friendships end. That is true in every town in the country, and the Mulroney rupture had a public cause that had nothing to do with the Duchess's character. A woman whose life changed beyond all recognition would have lost friends whoever she was. But the commentators pressing this line make a narrower point, and it is the one that gives the whole forecast its teeth. The people who dropped away had stopped being useful. The useful ones are still in the photographs, which sets up the only real test of the theory. Because if the pattern is real, then the year the useful one stopped calling is the year everything changes. The year the ladder moved. If 2026 is the year the forecast hardened, it is because of what stopped happening rather than anything that started. The Met Gala is the clearest example, and its clarity is physical rather than rhetorical. She was not seated at a back table. She was not placed near the kitchens. She was not photographed arriving late and leaving early. She was not there at all. No car, no steps, no dress, no name on any list a photographer was working from. Anna Wintour controls that room absolutely, and for a woman building a lifestyle brand, absence from it is a commercial fact before it is a social one. Ingrid Seward put it in the language of the industry rather than the palace. Being seen there would raise her rate. The Netflix restructuring landed in the same period, and the lifestyle series that carried her name was received without enthusiasm, even by people who had wanted it to work. Then there is the story the panels enjoy most, and which deserves the most caution, because it rests on reports rather than records. Lauren Sanchez, now married to Jeff Bezos, is said to have tried to build a friendship years ago and to have been rebuffed. A dismissive word is alleged to have been used. No witness to it has ever been produced, and the woman herself has never confirmed it. And it may be nothing more than a rumor that hardened through repetition. What is not in dispute is the shape of the guest lists. The Kardashian circle cooled. Elton John and David Furnish cooled. The Obamas, the Clooneys, Oprah Winfrey, all present at Windsor in 2018. None of them fixtures now. Her own Netflix series, with a full production budget and an open kitchen door, drew no household name larger than Chrissy Teigen. Some of that is simply gravity. A woman with no institution behind her and no streaming giant funding her output, living 2 hours north of Los Angeles with 2 small children and a school run, will not appear at the rate she did in 2019. Half the guest lists in that town look different from the way they looked in 2018, and nobody builds a theory about those marriages. Invitations follow leverage, and leverage moves for reasons that have nothing to do with anyone's character. But hold the two halves of this year side by side, and the picture is genuinely strange. A woman said to be taking meetings with billionaires in Los Angeles, in a town where the wives of billionaires have quietly stopped picking up. That is the ground Lady C is standing on when she says the arrangement has stopped paying. So, the question left is what her forecast actually amounts to, once everything unproven is stripped out of it. What changing would actually mean. Strip the speculation away, and a narrow, checkable core survives. Harry's biographer, Diana's former butler, a royal correspondent, and Lady Colin Campbell have each said a version of the same thing within the same 12 months, and they disagree only about timing. That is not evidence of anything happening inside a marriage. It is evidence of a consensus forming among the people who watch it professionally, which is a smaller claim and a different one. The commercial facts underneath that consensus need no unnamed source at all. The Netflix arrangement shrank. The lifestyle brand has not broken through. Appearance fees have fallen from 7 figures to 5. The Met Gala did not call. What the commentators add to those facts is motive, and motive is precisely where every one of them is guessing. There is a reading of all this that nobody on these panels will voice, and it explains the observable facts just as neatly. 2 people who left an institution at enormous personal cost, who have been the subject of relentless commentary for 6 years, and who are raising 2 young children a long way from either family, might simply be a couple under extraordinary pressure. That version requires assuming far less about a woman none of these commentators has ever met. Lady C's answer would be that she has watched this world for 40 years and knows what a spent arrangement looks like from the outside. She may well be right. She has been right before. She has also been wrong. And this time, there is no document anywhere to check her against. So her forecast stands as exactly what it is. Not a leak, not a filing, a reading from the most experienced commentator in the field, that the thing which held this marriage together is no longer holding it, and that the woman at the center of it has spent a year discovering that the door she married no longer opens the rooms it used to. Whether any of that changes anything is hers alone to decide, and through all of it, she has said absolutely nothing. If you want the rest of this story as it develops, subscribe, because there is a great deal more coming this week. And tell me where you land in the comments. Was Harry a man who was taken in, or a grown adult who read the terms and signed anyway?